Well, my name is Sarah Hayden. I'm the Executive Director at NCM Hub here in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And this is a first. This is our first conversation, Anti-Racism and Discrimination Day, a community conversation. In the past, we held an annual independence celebration around this time in the summer. And as it came more to our understanding and just the front of our brains that everybody is not was not free on the 4th of July or for Independence celebration, we have altered this to be a conversation about all of that because it's a very important conversation to have. Jessica is going to be leading the discussion and introducing our very special guests who we're so delighted to have. And I'm so grateful for the people that are here. It's really wonderful to see you. So Jessica Harrington, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. We would not be here without you. Thanks for doing such a great job helping provide resources to our community. My name is Jessica. I'm the media coordinator at NCM Hub, and I am very excited to be introducing our special guest speaker. Just some quick, housekeeping. If you do have a question, please just make sure you use the raise your hand feature to anyone who is on our live Zoom, and also hello to everyone on YouTube and on our local channel 9. So I'm going to introduce Susan X. Jane, who we are so grateful to have. She's Principal of Navigators Consulting, is her title that she is going to also tell you more about. Susan has experience in diversity, equity, and strategic planning. She has over 25 years of experience working in mission-focused organizations, supporting communities to create change and working with leaders who are ready to tackle that change. So we are very, very excited. Susan, it is so great to have you here with us. Please say hi to everyone.
Thank you so much for having me here today. And thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for everybody that's watching. Super excited to have some conversation with you all.
Awesome. So let's just get started. If you would tell us a little bit more about your title and what you do.
Okay, I'm the Principal of Navigators.
You have quite a bit of experience, so if you could just share a little bit.
Okay, I'm the Principal of Navigators Consulting, and so I have my own consulting business where we work with all sorts of organizations in both the public and private sector to address issues of race and culture inside their organization and in the work that they're doing. I am a recovering professor. I used to be an instructor at Wheelock College and was the director of the undergraduate communications and media literacy program, where we thought a lot about race and representation. And then prior to that, I worked in nonprofit. I was a senior manager at the YWCA Boston. And I started out my work in juvenile justice. So I've made my way through all of the different sectors, working with people around issues of diversity and inclusion and race and representation for more decades than I'd like to admit. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And I am pretty sure you said you grew up in Swampscott, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I did. I graduated from school in Swampscott. So I forgot what was the mascot. Oh, Big Blue, right? So that was many moons ago. And I live on the North Shore. So I am a Bostonian. Nice to be in a local group.
And you and I, exactly. You and I got connected through someone, a mutual friend out of Cambridge. Mm-hmm. So it's great that you are so familiar with the area or experience just growing up in Swampscott in this local area and what that was like and how that might fuel the work that you do today.
Yeah, that's good. And I don't have to worry about saying, yeah, guys, it's you all understand me. Although I'm working on my gendered language.
Yes.
All right, so shall we get started and have a little conversation? What can I tell you?
I think, Jess has some questions, I think. Yeah,
I would love to know what your experience was like just growing up in Swampscott. Sorry if I missed there might be a little bit of a lag. But yeah, I would love to know more about what your experience was like growing up in Swampscott, just in this area.
It was a very interesting experience. I grew up in Swampscott. I am a Black woman and I'm also a transracial adoptee, which means that when I was a baby, I was adopted by a white family. So I have always lived across these lines of culture. And growing up in Swampscott, I have to say, looking back on it, I would say that it at some points felt really isolating. There was very, very little diversity. And so there wasn't a lot of intercultural communication or even, a like deep community. I know that is changing as the area becomes more diverse. So that's really exciting to see. And so I think that can be really challenging when you don't have other people who have shared lived experiences near you to kind of get an understanding of what it is that you're experiencing and feeling. So it's really good to have opportunities like this where people can learn so they can reach out across those boundaries. Yeah.
And I'm sure that your experiences have definitely fueled some of the work that you're doing today. Would you say that you have a lot of experience working with a community like Newburyport where there is a lack of diversity?
Yeah, I spent, because of the way that I grew up, I spent a lot of time in what we call PWIs, predominantly white spaces or predominantly white institutions. And so a lot of the work that I do is within PWIs, helping people to cross those boundaries who are white, who are looking for an opportunity to enter into the conversation. While it is really important to make sure in this moment, we remember that this is a moment of Black pain and Black grief that is brought about by the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and others. And so we really don't want to lose having this at the center. But as we think about this work for people of color, this is not something new. We are always crossing these boundaries. But I like to help people who are at different points in their journey, and having grown up in a predominantly white community, I think has given me some information to help people reach across those boundaries. Yeah.
I agree. So important to remember why we are here. And I thank you for just sharing that and sharing about your experiences. So we spoke a little bit about the fundraiser that is happening this weekend and some of the almost backlash or resistance that some of the students experienced with wanting to donate to Black Lives Matter and having some of their artwork not be labeled as inclusive. And so as much as this has become a topic of concern and we feel like it is problematic, we are at least thankful that we are recognizing that these problems exist. And from there, I am wondering if you could possibly speak on what role does a school system play in anti-racism work, and how can we as conscious community members work to address racism in our school system, if you have any experience with that?
I did spend a lot of time in educational institutions, both working as a community organizer in a school, embedded in a school, and then of course working in higher ed as well. So I've spent some time in educational institutions. We have to remember that these are institutions, as educational institutions are a really important part of the socialization process in teaching young people what it means to be a member of this society, teaching young people what our history is, what's normal, and what are the ideas that we should use to go out into the world to make sense of the places where we are. So I think it's very important to remember that that is a function of the institution. We can't have schools that are not engaged in issues of race. In fact, the dollars that are allocated to schools to educate young people is a part of the larger systemic issues that we face around race. We know that education is funded by property taxes, which means that towns that have higher property taxes have a different education system than places where they have a different kind of property base. So if you think about an urban place where there are a lot more businesses, or even a city like Boston, where there are a lot of higher ed institutions that don't owe property taxes to the city, we get a very different school system that comes out of that. And so the system itself is a part of the world that we live in, where there are inequities that are embedded in our systems. And so as we talk about being anti-racist, we can't be anti-racist in absence of the institutions that we're a part of on a day-to-day basis. And especially, as I said, in education, that's where we train young people to think about their society. And those young people are making active decisions now about how they'll show up in the world. So we have to do our best to make sure that we are actively telling them a full picture of the country that they live in so that they can be better stewards of the communities that they're a part of.
So would you say that we should be holding our school systems accountable for educating our youth on issues of race?
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that there is accountability happening there, because there is action happening. So if we think about, well, is it right for a school to take action around issues of race and racism? Absolutely. By their very educational kind of dictate that they have to do, they are taking action in telling people what kind of a community that we live in. And as we think about, what's normal, so I don't want to speak too much to the situation that you all are dealing with. I know that you've been doing a great job in championing some of those discussions for your community today. But as we think about who gets to decide who is represented, who gets to decide what it means to be inclusive, there are issues of power that are in play there. So when we think about race, we often think about them as interpersonal issues between people. How will people feel about a flyer that goes out or an event that's being held? But that how we feel about it is a function of these systems and institutions that we're a part of. So institutions are doing something. It's just a matter of, are we bringing our conscious awareness to it so that we're making sure that those institutions are being held accountable to do something that will really help build an inclusive community. In absence of drawing our attention to it, we might have systems that are perpetuating the way that things have been in, and we can see the results of unequal systems all across the education system. So institutions are doing something already. And it is our right as people in a community to make sure that the systems that are set up to serve us serve everybody and serve all the members of our community equally. I think people worry about getting into the conversations. It feels tricky. And so I offer this line in the sand. Do we believe that every student in our school system deserves the right to be represented fully and equally and bring their whole selves to the table? And then from that, we can start to think about how do we do that. But we need to get to that point first where we say, yes, this is the responsibility of the community to address the way that power is shared here. Because like I said, it's not just about how we feel about different races, but about the power that those groups have. So something's always happening. So it's good to make sure that we're doing it consciously and thoughtfully and not just allowing it to happen.
Yeah, as I personally have been learning more about anti-racism and just really understanding that how big the issue is, I think that I've really found myself asking a lot of questions about these systems in place and about the institutionalization of racism. And so what I would ask following that is, are there any particular policies or legislation that we as community members should pay attention to and that we should look more into in particular? Are there any that stand out as most important for starters?
I think it's important to be involved locally because there are so many ways that power is organized in our society. So if we want to be inclusive around race, as we're talking about today, but that also extends to gender, different gender or sexual identities, different abilities. So we want to make sure that we extend this to all of those different identity groups that are part of our community. But it's in the curriculum, it's in the activities that schools organize to make sure they are providing an education for students that will allow them to be well-rounded citizens of the world. So it is in so many parts of the institution. Who are the teachers? Who's on the school committee? What happens at drop-off? All of those are opportunities where we can get in and think about this, and to not just let things blow up when something comes up and everybody gets angry and yells at each other, but to make sure that all throughout the school year, we're thinking about how do we show up so that every student that comes out of this system is educated and prepared. I think it's important to remember when you're in a predominantly white community, you may not see issues of race being discussed and playing out. And so you feel like, well, we don't have those issues here, so it's not important to discuss them. But it's important to remember nearly 50% of the United States is members of groups that we formerly referred to as minorities. Boston has been a majority minority city for over a decade. So there is not going to be a place in our country or on this planet where you're not going to engage across cultures or across racial groups. Educating young people to send them out into the world means making sure that they're prepared to do this. So it's not just about making sure we recognize the ability of Black young people or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color to make their voices heard, but all of us need to make sure that we have education to cross those cultures so that as students go out into the world, they're ready to compete in a global market and to be a part of a country that's increasingly diverse.
There's so much value here. Thank you for answering that. I want to now kind of go into more individual action. How can we learn to be better anti-racists? And do we want to just start this conversation more so by defining racism just in a definition? Do you have a definition that you would use?
I do have a definition that I like to use that is a very short definition. It tries to take something really complex and boil it down fairly simply, but racism is the application of prejudice plus power together. So it is about the bias that people may hold. People hear a lot about bias these days and conversation about implicit bias or conscious bias. And so we really want to think about what is the way that our beliefs, norms, and values show up in the world, and how do we use the power of the world that we're in to act out on those beliefs, norms, and values in ways that might be positive and inclusive, or that might be exclusive. So I think that a good definition of racism is to make sure that we're thinking both about bias and prejudice, but also about issues of power. When we look at the history of race and racism in America, it might surprise a lot of people to know that the idea of race as we all understand it on this call and in the United States today, that concept of race did not exist before America. So about 500 years ago, if you said the word race, people would not think of the things that we are talking about. So race is a relatively modern invention. And the reason that race came to be a social construct, a way that we make rules and organize our society, it was really about the conservation of power to exploit labor in order to build the colonies. And so in order to build out those colonies, which didn't have a lot of money and didn't have a lot of people that could do all of the heavy work, we needed to exploit that labor, and that meant enslaved Africans or indentured servants. And so race was the idea that allowed people to think that that was an appropriate way to distribute power. So it's really important to, as we get onto the journey of racism, to really open up our mind from thinking just about how individuals interact and thinking about what is the way that power is organized in my society. Like we said about schools, who pays for the schools? Who gets to make the decisions about the schools, and who gets to decide what children will learn in terms of what it means to be educated. So that prejudice plus power lets us look at both of those parts of the equation.
Yeah, I think that those are all very, very good answers. Thank you. I think that in terms of our school system, identifying who is in charge and really understanding who we're supporting and who we're, or because a big part of racism is you may not actively be supporting, but you may be allowing systems that are racist to exist. And so a part of learning how to be anti-racist is learning how to speak up. And also to speak up and then to be corrected. because we are all learning. And I think that that's a big part that I want to make sure I mention today is we're all starting from a different place. We all have different gaps where we need to work on to learn how to be better anti-racists. And so in doing so, as we, take this step to, move forward from today, working to be better anti-racists, do you have advice for individual learning? Because of course it is no one's responsibility to educate us on issues that we need to be actively working towards, but do you have advice while you are here to offer maybe a place for?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, it is some people's jobs to educate people. So you all put together this opportunity for people to learn. And so there are places where you can go in your community to connect to other people that want to think about these issues. You can Google anti-racist reading lists and get maybe several hundred reading lists of articles and videos. So educating ourselves about that is really important. For instance, I just shared that racism didn't exist between 400 or 500 years ago. For some people that are hearing that, they're like, that can't be right. That is not true, because it's so different than what I know for me that I grew up learning in school. And so as history and sociology and other academic studies have looked more closely at race, there's a lot of new information out there, so you can learn that. I think sometimes people skip one of the most important steps that you can take if you are just beginning this journey, is to think really deeply about your own experiences, to think about questions like, when was the first time that you learned race was even a thing? When was the first time that you saw or were a witness to or experienced racism in your life? When was the last time that you experienced racism or witnessed it? So we don't often spend the time to think about our own thinking about this, but because there is so much rhetoric and narrative in the environment around us, we really all need to fall back sometimes and think about, what do I even think about what's happening here? For instance, in the movement for the uprising for Black Lives, there was this outcry to defund the police, and people were really alarmed. Defund the police, dismantle the police, like that seems like an idea that's really going too far. But as you educate yourself, it's not saying get rid of them, it's let's make sure that the social work aspects that are in policing, that we get some social workers to do that. Issues of homelessness or houselessness that come up around it, let's get some support for that. So let's make sure that we have a variety of social supports. And so each of us has to think about, well, what do I think about that argument? What part of that makes sense to me? What part do I want to support? What part do I question or want to know more about? So thinking about our own thinking and not getting, driven around by tweets or social media, but really taking some time offline, just in your own head, to think about what you think, and then to make some decisions that are ways for you to show up now. You can change your ideas about race and diversity at any point in your life. I've worked with people that are very young children, and I've worked with people that are octogenarians who are all in a process of change. So things are changing in the world that we're in. So it makes sense for you to say, let me really think about this. I've always thought this my whole life, or for you, you might think, this is what I learned in school. Does that align with my own personal beliefs about how people should be treated? So yes, the reading lists and the videos and opportunities like this are so important to connect. And also don't forget to connect with yourself too, and think about what you think. What do you think about that, Jessica?
Unfortunately, the audio cut off for me on the last part of that.
Becky gave me a thumbs up, so we're good. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, good.
That's good.
I have a quick question, Jess. Can I interrupt? Just in what we have, we have such a capacity to be a place to offer, place for conversation or education. Do you feel, you may not have the answer to this, but something regular, like you know, I mean, we shouldn't have one conversation a year. So this is an annual celebration. So this will change to this, but we have now till next year to do. So what should it be monthly? I see Becky shaking her head. That's good.
Mhm.
And just, you know, yeah, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm sort of wondering. Weekly, or how do we get others engaged?
Yeah, I think first of all, work with the willing. Always work with the willing. There are lots of people that might have different opinions, and yet here are all these people that showed up on this call at 6:30 on a Wednesday night because they care. So there are people in
Yeah.
your community that do care, and whoever it is that shows up, that's who we're going to work with. I've been at events, one person walks through the door, and we all descend like, yay, we're in here, you know.
Yeah.
So you work with the willing, and you do what you can in each corner of it. I think that anti-racism is a practice. We used to have in diversity and equity spaces, people would have that one training a year and everybody would check, done, we've got that. But you know, what we were saying about race in January wasn't what we said in March, wasn't what we said in June, it's not what we're saying now. And I've been talking to hundreds of people over this year, and it is a fast moving target. If you wait a year, I mean, every day in 2020 is a year. So if you wait a year, it's like 300 years in the future. What has happened? So the more you can circle back to it, the better. I think about it like working out. How many sit-ups or how often would you do sit-ups and then you would expect to see a result? The more you do a little bit of practice more often, the stronger those muscles are going to be, because these are relational muscles. It's getting knowledge, but then practicing that in relationships and making things that you might just be bringing your awareness to feel a little bit more normal. So being able to have a chance to say, hey, let's circle up this month, because I promise you next month in September and definitely in October, and I am sure in November at this time, we're going to be in a totally different world. So as long as there are some people that are willing to get together on a regular basis, then you really start to deepen your understanding of it. So the time you put in is going to be the result that you'll get. And the more you can make it, as you suggested, a regular practice, the better off you will be. And that doesn't
I
mean
love
you
that.
always have to have a big event, but sometimes it's just those little things that, like I say it, knitting new ways of being. So just pick up a stitch every now and then pretty soon you'll see that you have some new cloth.
Thank you. That's a wonderful way of thinking about it. The practice of it being a practice. That is, it changes sort of the whole way of thinking about it. Yeah, thank you.
I
Yeah, we
wish
do
you
have
could
a
do
great
one sit up and be
platform.
done. Yeah, you
Go
do have
ahead.
a plat. I said, I wish you could have one sit up and be done, but we know
Yeah,
that
me
you can't,
too.
you know, and that's what platforms are for, is to bring people a chance to come together and have these conversations. And there's an arc to it. You start talking about it, people are really excited. You talk about it a little more, everybody gets mad and has to go and do some thinking, and then you come back together, and all of a sudden, just like when you work out, you break down and you build up, and you break down and you build up. And that process is the thing that creates new, stronger structures.
Thank you. That's wonderful, wonderfully put, and very helpful for me moving forward. And I do feel so blessed that I have this opportunity to be able to create something in the community with all these people that are interested, so that we can continue.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. I'll
One
let
step
Jess
at a
go to
time.
the, go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I think all this talk about inner work and doing that reflection is so valuable. And then coming to the realization that you don't always need to do the inner work alone, and that actually building through organizations is the most effective
Mhm,
way to create this change that we're looking for. So
mhm.
I think that you put that in a very great way. So thank you. I want to open up for anyone who has questions for Susan. I want you to use the raise your hand feature if you know where that is. So you can find it by going to participants, and then I believe you should see a place to raise your hand. If you cannot figure out that feature, you can also raise your hand on your video camera. I do ask that if you're comfortable with it, put your camera on so you can say hi. If anyone has any questions, I will look for your hands now. Let's see, also Tyler, if you see anyone, you can unmute them.
I see
Catherine.
Catherine, see your hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
I was glad to be able to make this.
So glad you're here.
I'm a founding member of a group we have in town called the Anti-Racism Affinity Group. We've been around for about 3 years, and we've been showing films and videos at the Senior Community Center, spring and fall, but since the COVID hit, we haven't been able to do that. But we've been reading and reading and reading for the last number of years. And I came upon a book. I wonder if I could, I'm not on the screen. Let me see. This book is called, no, that's not it. The book is called The Inner Work of Racial Justice by, have you heard of it?
I have not heard of that one.
By Rhonda Magee.
Oh.
And she's a lawyer and a practitioner of mindfulness. And so she talks a lot about the work of racism, and then how to pause and how to reflect and how to really, not the firing up and the being so angry all the time really is sometimes counterproductive. And this can be, it's such a soothing book, and I just wanted to share it with people.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. People really do come to this in very different ways. For some people, we want to be easing into some water that can feel very hot. And then we also want to make sure to make space. You're right, being angry sometimes can feel counterproductive, and also is a pretty appropriate response to oppression in a lot of ways as well. So we want to make space for all those different ways of being, and so that we can kind of stay in the fight long term. We want to take care of those feelings and be mindful of them as come up. But so much of this work is about mindfulness and drawing your attention to things and trying to do it in a way that is so intentional. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day about looting. And I think it's important to understand as counterproductive as anger sometimes can be, in the face of continued oppression, we have to not blame the victims, but really think about what pushes people to the edge. We can be in deep empathy this year. I think we all are being pushed to our limits this year by the circumstances around it. And that can help ground us when we're being mindful in empathy for why other people may be having very intense feelings and intense reactions, because we are talking about hurt and harm, that, these are real concerns that people have. Thinking about a number of Black women that have been shot in their home, it weighs on your mind when you lay down to sleep, and that that's not a way to live. So being mindful can ground us, like you said, in that calm energy that we need to have, the difficult thoughts we need to have ourselves, and also can give us an opportunity to be empathetic with other people. Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
So important. Yeah. Any other questions there from people?
I have, I guess, a question or a thought with a question mark at the end, maybe. It sort of ties in with what you were just talking about. There's so much anger right now, and I mean like between strangers, just across the board, and this stuff about cancel culture. There's just a lot of anger between anonymous people. And then I know for some of the teenagers that have been, out demonstrating on Market Square in our little part of the world, sometimes they'll encounter, a person drives by and gives them the finger while they're holding up Black Lives Matter signs, that while these teenagers are holding up these signs, or they'll even try to say other things to be offensive and get under their skin. And I think to what you're saying in terms of sustaining, reflecting, and working with the willing, like just, do you have some advice about kind of managing those situations?
We are all in a trauma response right now. We are all experiencing multiple traumas and people react in all sorts of different ways. Tensions are extremely high right now, as you all know. I mean, we're having this nice conversation. Oh, what do we do? The world's on fire. Like, what the F? The world's on fire. That's why everybody's freaking out, and they are going to continue to decompensate and melt down over the next couple of months. So my advice is, as Wu-Tang would say, protect your neck, keep your chin tucked, and tap out when you need to. You have to get some self-care because these issues are intense. We are witnessing something that is the likes of which we've not seen. And we all like to pack it up and we're in these nice Zoom calls and everything. We should be running around screaming, going, what is going on in this world? No matter what side you're on, people are really, really intensely upset and angry. Trauma, fight, freeze, flight. So some of us are out there screaming and yelling, and that's how we can process the helplessness of the moment. Other people are curled up on the couch watching Netflix going, don't call me until January. Others of us, we want to do it, and just like that intense fear, you're just frozen in the moment. And so all of this, we have to meet it as it comes up with that mindfulness that Catherine was reminding us about, and also to extend to people, like when we see people that are raging, to like, yo, you are hurting, you are out of integrity with your own humanity. You are out of integrity when you don't believe that other humans are human beings. You are out of pocket with yourself, you know? And so to understand, that there is a sadness there, that you are blocked from your humanity by the smallness of the vision that you've chosen for yourself. And to realize we are going into the dark season. This has been the easy part of the year. Now we go into the hard part. So what are you going to do to get ready for that? That is to grab onto those willing people and to hold tight. And when you feel like, oh my God, I can't take it, I'm overwhelmed, to take a pause and know Jessica's out here in these streets. She's got me. I can take today off to go hide and watch Netflix because I know she'll be out there, and tomorrow she'll be in and I'll be out. That we take turns, that we work together. Just like, you know, you see a bar fight in a movie and everybody's fighting in a big crowd, all the Avengers, and it's like, sometimes you got to be in the middle of that circle being like, I can't do it right now. And other times you got to be grabbing the chair and out there hitting these ideologies that are clobbering us all. But prepare. That's what I would say. Prepare. Remember when we were all buying toilet paper? Boy, you better buy yourself a big stock of mindfulness, because here comes the hard part. So dark. These are dark times. I don't know how I can even smile about it, but these are dark times. But I'm glad, look at all of you. We're all here together. We're all here together. So, yeah. Any last questions? I know I have to hop off in just a couple of minutes, so I really would like, I see one more hand there. So if you'd like to, oh, I see a couple of hands there. So let me take as many of them as I can. Afro San, is that correct?
Yeah, Afroz Khan. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining and doing this with us. And I'm actually a city councilor here in Newburyport. And one of the things that I'm thrilled to see is finally some engagement in terms of the public paying attention. There have been so many over the last few years. You know, if you look at how we structured our zoning, there are indirect ways that one could be a little bit more non-inclusive of others. And unfortunately, a lot of policies have already been established and passed that have done some damage, in my opinion. But with that said, seeing the engagement now, which is so exciting for me, I think it's like, what could we do further with that engagement? And so my message is really about getting people to be actively, whether it's writing letters to the editor, having a presence and telling a story. Because I will tell you, in terms of, you know, again, I've talked to so many people in our city, and I understand it, both sides, and it's sad, but I do think people have associated with a side or a a perspective on a broader issue of what's happening, especially when you go to the Black Lives Matter rallies, which I've gone to with my daughter. But there are people who feel like it's being a little bit disrespectful to our law enforcement, which is not at all the intention. And so there's a lot of this education that needs to happen, but I don't think we're being very effective in it. And instead, what you're seeing happen is the thin blue line flag being pulled down from our parks because it's kind of been, I guess, hijacked to be another symbol, but no one understands that. So I feel like we're kind of, unless we could educate and do some type of a campaign to explain a little bit more into the details, we're only going to create a bigger divide. So I guess I more spoke than listening to you, but I wonder, in a place where we are like that with the division that I see, just a gap that's getting wider, how do we start bringing that closer together? And I know other people ask that, but I'm really looking for specific ways on how we could use media, our newspaper, whatever we could do to get that. So I don't know if you have any other ideas, but I'm eager to hear them.
I mean, you're on the front line. You're the city councilor. So we all think global, act local. We forget, but it really does come down to those local ordinances and those local initiatives to make those things done. You all can hop on a call. And are you voting in the in-between elections? Are you running for city council? Are you showing up to meetings to support these initiatives? And how do people begin to understand this? It is, the Black Lives Matter movement is not anti-police. It wants to make a place where everybody can feel safe. And if you have a police person in your life that you care very much about, we want to send them out into places that are safe, and we don't want to them doing work that's going to put them in harm's way, that's going to unfairly politicize them, or to put them in a position where they have to choose between their humanity and their ability to do a job. Those are very hard conversations to have, and there is deep nuance that needs to happen. And so it's putting time in, it's putting in the resources. And it's making sure that you have some frank conversation with people at the table when you can. But as somebody that's a city politician, you know, it is just this pushing that rock up the hill every single day. And really, like, for all of you on the call, like, what are you doing to back my sister here up? Because we need everybody to come to the table over and over and over again. We need people to know that on whatever side, if you don't show up at these meetings, or if you're not a part of these dialogues, you're going to miss something. That we can't just have the both sides be in dialogue forever, but think about where there are opportunities to move forward, and we're going to organize around that, and we're going to push, just like the work that that you've been talking about, Jessica, around the school fundraiser. When something comes up, all right, everybody, time to tag in, let's work together. And you start to get people, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, a list of 20 or 30 people that you know you can call in a moment, and that each person on that list needs to know, I have a responsibility to show up for my community. And so there is going to be no action that will stop it. It is all of these little actions together that begin to move us into a new place. But the political power and showing up on those city council meetings, or watching what's happening when they're live streamed, those things that people feel like are so deep in the weeds of politics, that's where these actions are happening in your community. And if you're not paying attention to that, we want to be mindful and then bring that mindfulness into action, so that people feel like they're not alone, that they're not showing up in a call and like, hey, look, great, here are all these people, that these people need to be on a speed dial list. So when something happens, everybody can stand up together, and that we know that there's enough of us that if I really can't make it, that my community is going to have my back. Training, education, continued dialogue, putting it on the agenda at every city council meeting, school council meeting, and helping to have people maybe build some alliances. You have people in the schools that are really active thinking about it now. Hey guys, don't forget that, or hey all, working on my gendered language, hey all, don't forget that there are these zoning things that are happening and that are getting passed. Can we get a school project on, so young people in the school who are interested in this start to look at their own community more closely and work together with local politicians? So what are the alliances we can build between groups that are willing and are doing different things, so that we know that everybody can show up and work together? Yeah, it's not an easy answer though. So I just want to acknowledge that you asked me for a specific bunch of steps, and I was just like, because it's all of those things. And like I said, it's like knitting. You say, which of these stitches is the stitch that holds us together? And the answer is yes, all of them. Yeah.
I see maybe one more question. Do you have time for one more?
I'll take one more question.
Okay, Erin.
Hi, I'm sorry, I don't have access to video right now. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and to share your knowledge and experience and insight with us. I guess I'm grappling with the fact that my kids go to school in Newburyport. They're predominantly white schools that are, as far as I know, in my child's school, have all white faculty and administrators. And so I've been talking with faculty for several years about systemic racism, the choices that they make in curriculum, the policies they have, but because the systems benefit the people in power, and because teachers have their own discomfort around addressing racism, even when students bring conversations about anti-racist practices, about white supremacy to teachers, these conversations are shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, I just don't know how to affect any kind of change.
Mm. Is there a parent council?
Not one that shares this as a concern, although that may change. It's also really difficult to organize at this moment when we don't see and interact with other people. But I guess my real concern is, you know, how do we work within schools that are all white when those systems that are in place benefit white teachers and white administrators, right?
First, you know that there are people that are benefiting from the system remaining the way it is. That is the shape of the opposition, and it's important to acknowledge that, because for some people that is the first step, is learning and acknowledging that, and it seems like you already have that first step. And to not forget that schools are supposed to serve the community. You may not be the only parent that thinks this. So again, can you write a letter to the editor? Can you show up at a city council or a school committee meeting? Are there other parents that are feeling the same thing? When a situation comes up with a student, how do you kind of organize? And even though it is hard to organize in the era of COVID, those lists of people who are classmates, or those conversations that we may be able to have virtually, sometimes it's really hard for parents to get together to meetings, but in the era of COVID, people don't have to leave their house in order to do that. So how can we use this time to begin to do some organizing? And it's not easy. Organizing is very challenging, and organizing when there are no toeholds into power is equally challenging. But look at who are the local elected officials, and how can I talk with them in terms of getting a better sense of what's happening at the town level in terms of where the power lies. And to remind parents who may feel like, well, I have a young person and they're white, and so maybe these aren't my issues. We all are going to live in a multicultural world, and the young people that are in school now are already living in a majority minority world. For the past couple of years, people under 18 are majority minority. Where will they work? What kind of workplace will they be able to engage in if they don't have these skills or they don't have these history? I can say, as somebody that is doing corporate training and work in higher ed, that's what these companies are doing, is thinking about, this is how we get on the ball because this is where our customers are moving. So if your child wants to work in these companies, this is a skill that they need. And we need to think about it not as a nice thing that we're doing for marginalized people, but that marginalized people are a part of our community, and that we don't function without them. And when we begin to understand that this is a benefit to all people, and that white people and white students miss out when the school system is not serving and preparing them to live and work in this diverse world, then we can just start to get some traction. So I know again, not an easy answer. It's that slow knitting. And I am going to leave you all to share some of your resources. But I can say, look at all of these stitches happening in your community. You know that your local officials are looking for you to show up and to help. And there is nobody else coming. There is no Calvary but you. So work with the willing and keep knitting away, and you guys will be able to make change. And so I wish you all the best of luck as we go
Thank you.
through a challenging time. And always here if you need to ping me or you need some help. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Susan, so much. Thank you.
Susan. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks so much for
Bye-bye.
joining us. Awesome.
All right,
that
Jess,
was
do you
so
wanna-
great.
That was great. So what's next, Jess? Do you want to go?
Yeah, so I know that not everyone's question may have gotten answered, but if you do want me to reach out to Susan, we can still work on getting those questions answered. So if you want to either turn your audio on, you can join. I mean, you can share your question now, or you can also send it in the text box, and I'll make sure that we ask Susan anything else that anyone has questions about. Aside from that, I want to definitely open this for further discussion. So a part of this event was for community members to help to educate one another. If anyone did bring a quote or any book suggestion or any piece of information that they would like to share with us, now would be a great time to do that. Oops. I did not mean to turn off my video on you guys.
Well, I think I can say one thing. Just tomorrow, I didn't even get a chance to mention to Jess, but I'll talk to her later. But on our website, we had talked about it a little bit, but on our NCM Hub website, we'll have I think it'll be a page under the engage. We have learn, share, engage. The engage page, I can't even remember what we have. We'll have anti-racism resources, so we can, put things there. And if there's meetings or books or whatever, you can send them either to Jess or to the info. It was on the, I'm at NCM Hub. I mean, we were next to the senior center, Catherine. I feel embarrassed that I didn't know what you were doing, but this is the whatever, live and learn. But we can start aggregating our resources and finding people that are interested, and then we can continue this type of conversation. I know I can speak to Afros and Becky and Jess, and I see names, I see Kathleen and Kelly, and see what we can plan for the next thing, and just try to get the ball rolling. It's just so great that everybody's here.
It is great. I see that Adeline, you have your hand up. I think you are unmuted, so if you'd like to share something, please do.
Sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you for organizing this. It's been really wonderful to listen. And even though I don't live in Newburyport and I work in West Newbury for Nourishing the North Shore, we're an organization that focuses on food access. So I just wanted to share this one really fabulous resource called the Food Solutions of New England. They put out a 21-day racial equity challenge where an entire group can participate in facilitated discussion around anti-racism and building an anti-racist community. And it is specifically around food justice, and because the food system is one of the greatest examples across our nation of inequity in our culture and in our communities. But I do think that they do a good job of branching out and bringing in a lot of other fabulous resources to kind of get more people engaged and create connections about this. So I'm putting it in the chat box. And then I also brought an article that kind of felt like highlighted the work that they do. There is this really great article from Food First about decolonizing your diet. And as a agricultural worker and food grower and teacher of growing food and preserving food, that one really spoke to me a lot, because I don't think that we're often challenged to see racism and white supremacy in so many different places in our life, not just in our interactions, but even in our diet. So thank you for letting me share.
Awesome. Thank you, Addie. And we will make sure that we save those resources and get them sent out. If anyone else here is a part of an organization, you want to share those resources, we will get those sent to you. Thank you again for sharing. If anyone else has anything to share or even just say, if you have any questions or you want to continue, talking about how to be a better anti-racist, I can also suggest a book that I'm currently reading. It's part of our hidden history, I think part of our hidden history themed bookshelf at the Hub, which when we open is open for members. We have a lot of great books. So in the future, you can definitely check some out. I'm currently reading How to Be an Anti-Racist, and it also has like a workbook that goes along with it. And this has been really helpful in my individual education so far. Definitely recommend it. I can also send that out in the email to you guys. I invite anyone else who has book suggestions to share. And then we'll get wrapped up. Awesome. That podcast, I see Addie, you sent a podcast. That's great too. Make sure that everyone gets that.
Jess, you might want to mention the art auction on Saturday.
Definitely. So we have so earlier today we got to interview a couple of students who were participating in an art auction that's happening this Saturday at, I want to say at 2 o'clock. Stella, if you can correct me with the time, please do.
It's 1 to 4 p.m.
1 to 4.
Yeah.
Awesome. So 1 to 4, they're going to be selling art, and that will be going directly to the Thurgood Marshall Fund. So that's funding education for Black and Brown communities, which is awesome. So definitely check out their art. I'll be there too, reading some poetry, and there will be live music. So definitely stop by this Saturday. It's right at the high school. We also were able to interview someone who is an alumni of NHS, was in my graduating class, and Cecily D'Angelo told us about the Black Lives Matter art auction, which is also a locally started art fundraiser. So if you want more information about that, I will definitely share that via email to all of you as well. I think that being here is really essential. I think this is just a start of a community dialogue that will continue moving forward, and this will not be the last effort or event that NCM Hub puts on. So please continue to stay up to date on what we're up to so that we can best get you connected with any resources to make change in our community, thinking about our school system moving forward, as well as local government, and really learning from everything that Susan spoke about today. We will be implementing that as much as we can. And I hope that you all, continue on your own individual education journey with anti-racism as well. Sarah, if there's anything else that you want to offer before we close
I did hear
out.
from Mike Testa at the high school, because I did send out to all the high school to all the principals in the district and the superintendent. They had a meeting at 6 o'clock about what's happening, and tomorrow we're actually filming what's going on with the schools and things like that. So it was nice that they did respond and say that they can't make it, but it's good. Next one, we'll get them. Yeah. So that I'm just so grateful for everybody showing up here, and we will continue our work together. You can get in touch with Jess or I through either the newsletter that she sent out or just at info@ncmhub.org. We're still, really careful about people coming in right now because of, our space is small, but we have Zoom and this is a great platform for now. So, and our website, which we'll get stuff out on that. So thank you all. Jess, did you want to say anything else to close?
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here. I think it's a great start, and that's what it is at the end of the day. It's just a start. So we will continue this conversation in the future, and I hope that you stay engaged. I am excited to stay connected with a lot of you, and please keep up the good work, and yeah, stay connected. That's all I have for now, but I'm looking forward to talking to you all soon, and thank you to everyone who watched and tuned in. We'll be in touch soon. Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.